Well, I like to think of myself as an ambassador from the dream world. Dreams started to make their way into my life at a fairly early age. I had a very contentious relationship when I was a child. But over time, as I grew into adulthood, we sort of repaired the damage. And by the time he passed away, we had a very loving relationship. So what happened was after he passed away, almost every month I would have a dream where he would and I would go for like a walk and talk. You know, and he usually would give me some advice, and he just looked at me straight in the eye and said, "Invest in AI." So, once again, it was just sort of my father sort of, protecting me and protecting my financial well being, this time through a dream.
Today's guest is Dr. Bhaskar Banerji.
We met 8 years old, and I had developed a really severe case of pneumonia, which took me out of school for a good month. And it turned out I aced the exams. Well, you might think that's a good thing. It actually got me into trouble because I was summoned to the headmaster's office and said, it doesn't make any sense that you got the highest score in the class when you were absent for an entire month and missed all the prep work. So you must have cheated. And I looked at him and I said, well, kind of, but not in the way that you're thinking. And then I told him my dream, the dream I had the night before I returned to school. And in that dream, I swept down a chimney, a lot like Santa Claus, and I was suddenly in the homeroom of my school teacher, and I sort of hovered like a ghost over his shoulder. He was writing at his desk. I was kind of hovered over his shoulder, and I saw him writing down all these questions and answers in a booklet.
Bhaskar has a doctorate in mind-body medicine, specializing in health-related dreams.
He pulls out the same metal rod from behind his back, and then he hurls that metal rod at me, right? And because I had the dream, I had that split second to push my head aside.
And now for my conversation with Dr. Bhaskar Banerji. If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was zero chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF Just Happened. And today I'm speaking with Bhaskar Banerji. He is a dream researcher. We met, not the most recent one, but the one before at the IONS conference. And Bhaskar is one of the ones who kindly has agreed to come back on for a second time after I know I told all of you about that technological disaster where I lost 5 recorded episodes. So Bhaskar, thank you. I appreciate it. And sorry you were one of the ones with the technical issue.
That's okay. That happens.
Yeah. So interesting. You are a dream educator. Tell us a little bit about you and what that means and all of that.
Well, I like to think of myself as an ambassador from the dream world. Dreams started to make their way into my life at a fairly early age. So even when I was a kid, dreams started to knock on my door, in a sense, and open me up to the possibilities of dreaming and what can happen when we really do a deep dive into the dream world. So, my journey started when I was a child, and then later in life, I decided to make it a little more formal and enrolled myself in the Dream Studies program at JFK University, where I got my master's. And then I continued to further delve into the academic dream world by getting my PhD in mind-body medicine, where I specialized in dreams and health as my concentration.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about your studies, but first I want to back up. You said you had experiences as a child, and from what I remember, you had some very pivotal, verified, really weird dream experience. Do you want to share that?
Sure. Yeah, I would say the one that really, cracked my egg open was when I was living in London. I was about 8 years old, and I had developed a really severe case of pneumonia, which took me out of school for a good solid month. And the day I returned to school was the day of exams. I didn't know that. No one bothered to call me or my parents and inform me that I was coming back to exams. And I didn't know what an exam was even, because I never had an exam before. I was only 8 years old. And it turned out I aced the exams. Well, you might think that's a good thing. It actually got me into trouble because I was summoned to the headmaster's office, which is, what we call a principal in England is a headmaster. And he looked at me very sternly. He looked kind of like a Dracula figure because, he wore this black cape and said, it doesn't make any sense that you got the highest score in the class when you were absent for an entire month and missed all the prep work. So you must have cheated. And I looked at him and I said, well, kind of, but not in the way that you're thinking. And then I told him my dream, the dream I had the night before I returned to school. And in that dream, I swept down a chimney, a lot like Santa Claus, and I was suddenly in the homeroom of my school teacher, and I sort of hovered like a ghost over his shoulder. He was writing at his desk. I was kind of hovered over his shoulder, and I saw him writing down all these questions and answers in a booklet. And I basically memorized all the questions and answers, and those were the very same questions and answers that appeared on the tests. So that's how I aced the exam. I didn't really study for it. I just dreamt it. So, they decided to do a little investigation. Actually, before that, he looked at me, again, very sternly and said, well, you're either the most creative liar I've ever met or you're telling the absolute truth. And then they did a little investigation and they looked at all the scores of the boys sitting around me, and all the scores are fortunately all low scores. So they realized then, that I hadn't cheated, at least not in the conventional way. And then they felt guilty and gave me an award.
I love that story. And, I just also think, no point really going down this path, but if schools were run better, then they would find programs for you to develop these abilities and be like, let's work on this dreaming. Like, this is your actual skill. But, whole other side thing, I am writing a book about, like, my experience as I went to, like, prep schools. So that's a whole other topic, but it's something that I, think of when I hear stories like that, as well as, of course, how fascinating that was. And was that a hack you were able to use the rest of school? If I could have done that in school, I can't tell you how much I would have loved that.
I wish, but no, it would happen every now and then. Something similar would happen, but I wasn't under my, volition or conscious control in any way. But yeah, once in a while, usually when I was in a real pickle, it would come through and save the day.
Do you have another save the day?
I do. Have another one was great was when I was in high school in the 12th grade, senior, and we had to read this book, Lord of the Flies. You might have heard of it.
Yes.
It was just a god-awful, boring book, in my opinion, and I just couldn't wrap my head.
I loved it.
I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So I had a different experience from you, obviously, here. Yeah. You had to write a paper. I just couldn't write the paper. And in our school, we had a policy that every week that you're delayed, you get marked down a grade. Yeah. So 4 weeks had gone by. I was now at a D.
Oh, no.
I'm at a D, right? And then one afternoon, I fell asleep, took a nap. I fell asleep. And in the dream, I was in the writer's mind as he was writing the book. So I could see... I could basically see his thought processes as to how he structured the book and why he, structured it the way he structured it. And I wrote my paper about that process. And then I was at a boarding school at the time, and you wouldn't believe what happened. A week later, my English teacher came to my room, knocked on the door with my paper, and I thought, uh-oh, what kind of trouble am I in this time, And he said, he handed me the paper, and I had an A+. So instead of at an A+, he said, I've read hundreds of papers on this topic over the years and never come across one as creative as this one. And so I gave you the A+, even though it's 4 weeks late.
Oh
So
my God.
that's
Well,
how,
that was a good teacher, admiring
yeah.
creativity like that.
Well, he was
And
blown away,
yeah. Well, and
because it just made so much sense, the paper.
do you think you were really in the writer's mind, like
I
the
do.
actual deceased
I
writer?
actually
Genuinely.
believe
Wow.
that I somehow did some weird time travel and went back to the time when he was writing that book and got into his psyche and just peered through it, you know. Um,
And was that a skill you were able then to use? I feel like if I could do that, I'd be like, let me go to Einstein. Actually, let me go to like some really wealthy investors. Let me go to Warren Buffett. Let me go to
well, that's the problem. Like I said, it's on and off. It doesn't. I can't
right.
do it, at will. I can't seem to, Maybe there is a way of doing that, but I haven't been able to harness my abilities to that extent. Maybe somebody else does that. I don't know.
Okay, so those are two fantastic stories that probably you more than anyone wondered why you were not able to do that for every assignment, but super cool stories. Then you went on to study and dream. Remind me of the exact degree, dream studies.
Dream studies at JFK University. Which, unfortunately, the program isn't there anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember Lloyd Arbach talking about they used to have a whole parapsychology and dream
Hmm.
department, but it's unfortunately, yeah, closed. What specifically did you study in that program?
Well, um, it was a masterful program because every teacher was specialized in some aspect of dreaming. So, well, so I didn't study any one particular area of dreaming. I got to study the entire gamut from, dream interpretation to lucid dreaming to shamanic dreaming, Sufic traditions, ancestral dreaming. I mean, it was really a very diverse program. So I got exposed to amazing teachers, each of whom, was able to, pass on something to me and, really, really broaden my scope of what dream practice can be and is.
Now, what do you think dreams are? Like my mom's a therapist and she thinks all dreams are like are unconscious speaking to us.
Yeah.
Mediums think dreams are ways to connect with the other side and other people say they're out of body and I would say I've had dreams that were all of the above. What do you think they are?
That's exactly my take. It's all the above and all the below.
Mhm.
Some of it is, the churnings of our subconscious mind. Some of it is messages from, other entities and divine sources. Some of it is leaving the body and going on journeys to other dimensions. Dreams serve so many different purposes.
And then you also got a PhD, or was that your PhD?
No, that was master's level, and the PhD was in mind body medicine and dreams and health.
Okay.
And that
Interesting.
came about through a dream too, a very
How
pivotal dream.
what was
Uh,
that dream?
so that dream, what happened was I was taking care of my partner who was very sick at the time, and in the process, started neglecting my own health. And one day, I woke up with a massive gum infection. So the entire right side of my, jaw, teeth was just inflamed, and shooting pains going up my head. Really
Mhm.
nasty. And I started calling around to various dentists trying to get an appointment, and it was a Friday. It was a Friday afternoon, and they were all like, "Oh, we're too busy," or "It's the weekend. We're going out of town. You have to wait till Monday." So I couldn't get any appointments,
Oh,
and I was like, "What am I
right.
going to do?" Because I'd already taken a whole bunch of painkillers; they were wearing off. I was
Yeah.
like, what am I going to do to solve this situation? And then I was taking a class at the time um, on Eckhart Tolle, and about a consciousness class.
Mhm.
And one of the recommendations that Eckhart Tolle has is that when you're in deep pain, instead of trying to shun the pain, instead of trying to stuff it down, embrace it fully.
Okay.
So I sat myself down in a comfortable chair and started to really fall into my pain, and it just
Mhm.
became so excruciating that I passed out. And
Oof.
when I passed out, I found myself in this dream where I'm in the void, sitting in the void in the same chair. And all of a sudden, this dakini comes into my field of vision. And dakini in the Hindu Buddhist tradition, is a celestial dancer healing entity. You know, and she's sort of dressed like a belly dancer, and she comes and sits on my lap, um, and starts to kiss me. And with each kiss, she took out some of the pain in my gums. And once all the pain was gone, I woke up.
Wow.
And my first impression was, I must still be dreaming, because how can this be possible? I did what we call a reality check, in dream lingo. I closed my nose and see if I could still breathe. I couldn't breathe, so I knew I was awake. Um, and then I rushed to the mirror to see what had happened. And when I opened my mouth, what I saw was there was a sac had formed under my chin, and all the pus that was impinging on the nerves in my gums had drained into that sac, and they were draining down my throat. So there was no more pressure on the nerves in my gums, and that's why there was no more pain. So not only was I pain free, but I saved myself a $5,000 dental bill in the process.
Wait, but how did you get rid of the sac? You didn't have to have it drained, or
No,
it
it
just
just
drained
just
itself?
drained of itself, and once everything was drained, the sac just disappeared. It just dissolved or went away. I don't know what
Oh
happened to
my
it, but
God.
but then I told my dentist the story, and she couldn't believe it. She was like, "Wow, I'd never heard anything like that before."
Yeah, I don't think most have. And I don't think most people who've had those experiences then feel comfortable telling their doctors and
No,
dentists because there's
no,
such little
yeah,
belief in that.
right.
And wow.
So then
And
that got me interested, asking the question: have other people had these experiences? And I found that in classical ancient Greek times, there was a whole tradition around this called the Asclepian dream healing tradition, where they believed in this dream healing god called Asclepius, and he would come in people's dreams and heal them of all kinds of afflictions. So that's how I decided to do my PhD, focus on dreams and health related dreams, because of that dream.
and do you think it's like some healer on the other side, or do we have our own internal abilities to heal ourselves by telling our bodies what to do, the way we can tell our hand to move? And you would have a dream like that was the story your mind made around it
But
in
once
your
again,
dream.
all the above.
All the above. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we can induce these kinds of phenomena, and have our bodies do all kinds of amazing magic tricks while we sleep. And at the same time, entities can come from other realms and help us out as well,
Okay.
as was this time.
I'm asking a super vain question. Can we do
Yeah,
it with like beauty stuff? Can we make our skin let me look like 17 again? And
I think it's possible. I wouldn't
ooh.
rule it out. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, there was a interesting study. I'm trying to remember the details of the study, where they took a group of men. I think they were in their 60s and 70s,
Okay.
and recreated the physical environment that they were in when they were like teenagers, or in their early 20s.
Okay.
And they noticed, that those men, suddenly started looking younger, and did a whole bunch of physiological tests as well. And then they saw that their bodies were now responding in an entirely different way, as if they were like much younger than their biological age.
My God. That's so interesting. There's
Yeah.
just so much we don't know. I mean, I think as we've gotten modern medicine, which is great, I am so
Yeah.
glad we have it, but the other stuff has all been put to the side, just as like
Yeah.
the way we've gotten cell phones. Apparently, I read a book, I think called Faces in the Smoke, of a
Mhm.
town, one of those untouched tribes, and they, don't even have electricity. This was in the 90s. I don't know if they still exist, but they were just,
Mhm.
obviously no phones. So
Yeah.
even before everyone had a cell phone, they had no phones and no
Yeah.
electricity, and they would just communicate psychically. It's so interesting. So I wonder what abilities, as we get this wonderful science, which again, I absolutely am a huge fan of, but I wonder what abilities get lost. And if we could combine the two, maybe
Sure.
the three combined with Eastern medicine, such as acupuncture, if we combine those three, what do we have,
Well, the
So,
mind is this incredible tool that we hardly know how to use.
mhm,
Barely scratch the
mhm.
surface of what we can do. I mean, just think about it. And this is, what in one of my sort of I don't know, ambitions, I would say, is to promote something what I call dream literacy. If you think
Mhm.
about it, 200 or 300 years ago, only 1 to 3% of the entire human population knew how to read and write. Right?
Wow.
Today, we take it for
Yeah.
granted that,
Yeah.
something like 80, 90% of the human population knows how to read and write. But just a
Hmm.
few hundred years ago, it was a few percentage of the population. And I think that's where we are with dreams right now. It's a few percentage of the population that are really tapping into the power of their dreams. And as a dream educator, it's sort of my goal to bring dreaming, to a much larger population, and hope that people, really, dive into the possibilities that, dreams can uncover and help them in their lives in all kinds of, ways.
And you said you also decided to research if anyone else had had healing dreams like this,
Yeah.
and you found that people had. Is there another story that stood out to you that you read about this?
Well, there's lots of stories. There's lots of anecdotal stories,
Okay.
and that's why I did the research that I did. I wanted to do something that was experimental. But yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
anecdotal stories are galore. Like there was a woman, for example, who had a dream where she looked in the mirror and she saw the word cancer written on her forehead. Right. So she
Mm.
went to her doctor and asked him to do a bunch of tests. He did. They turned out all negative. She still felt like there was something there, so she had him redo them. And sure enough, the second time around, they found something. You know,
Amazing.
um, yeah. So there's tons of stories like that. And because they're all anecdotal, I decided to do something that was a little bit more experimental. That's what my PhD was about, to take people on an experimental journey and see if we could actually trigger these kinds of dreams.
Do you have any student then who did?
Oh yeah, quite a few did. So, for example, some of them were like, so all the people who took part in the study had some kind of chronic disease, so things that they had had for at least 6 months. Okay, so for example, one example, and some of them had like partial healings, and some of them had full on remissions. So, for example, a partial healing would be, there was a gentleman who had a dream. He had high blood pressure, and he had a dream advising him to drink water before drinking wine. Okay, and
Mhm.
so he did that, and his blood pressure came down. It didn't come down complete to normal, but it came down so much he was able to get off his meds. Now,
Wow.
another lady who also had high blood pressure was able to eliminate it entirely, and she had a complete different set of dreams. She kept dreaming of potatoes. They were like potato databases, and different types of potato foods. So she started eating potatoes and did some research as well, and found out that potatoes are one of the best foods to lower blood pressure. She was able to completely lower her blood pressure down to normal. Right.
And now, I know you've mentioned stories too of people who had dreams that also saved them, but from things that happened, not disease, right?
Yeah.
Do you have, yeah, what are some, a
I've had,
story
I've
like
had more of those
you've
myself.
had that? Oh, yeah, share a story you had about that.
I've had more of those. Well, let's see, which one should I pick? So one that was very very telling in a way and very specific in a way. I was at a dance event and I left a little bit early. It was a nighttime event, and I left around 10 o'clock. And I was walking back to my car, and approaching me was a man, and he broke out into this smile. And when I saw that smile, I remembered that a dream character in my dreams the previous night had the very same smile. Looked totally different, but the smile was identical. And this dream character was also waving a metal rod. Okay, and we passed by each other. Nothing happened in the dream, but we passed by each other. Now, so here's this man in real life, in waking life, walking towards me, the same smile. I'm like, uh-oh, that's not a good sign. And you wouldn't believe what happens next. He pulls out the same metal rod from behind his back.
Wow.
And then he hurls that metal rod at me, right? And because I had the dream, I had that split second to push my head aside and have the rod go, fleeing past my head instead of hitting me and giving me a concussion. And then I just ran to my car and drove off before he could do a second take.
Oh my God.
So,
wow. And so you were saved. Your dreams.
Yeah, it's a life-saving dream, So I've had quite a few of those over the years. It wasn't the only one, but that's definitely one of them. The most recent one.
Most recent. Is there another you want to share? People love these stories.
Sure. There's another one. I used to take people on tours to Asia. So on one of those tours, we were in Laos, which is a country just north of Thailand. And our next destination was a place called Angkor Wat, a very famous temple complex in Cambodia. We were going to take the scenic route down there. We were going to fly into the capital of Cambodia and take a boat ride down the river, this very romantic boat ride to Angkor Wat. Well, unfortunately, the night before our departure, I had another dream. And in this dream, this mafioso had stuck a gun down my throat. And in Cambodia, in the capital of Cambodia, where we were going to fly into. So I woke up from that dream, and I woke up trembling from the dream.
Hey, everyone. I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually, and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality in the title.
So I woke up from that dream, and I woke up trembling from the dream. And whenever I wake up trembling from a dream, I know it's really serious. That's this body visceral information that I never ignore. So I told the group, I said, look, I've had this dream, and I think we should reroute and go through Bangkok instead, just fly directly to Angkor Wat instead of taking that majestic boat ride down the river. Well, everybody agreed except one couple. One couple was like, that's crazy. You're going to change the entire itinerary based on a single dream? That's just nuts. What's wrong with you?
Understandable reaction when you haven't studied all this. Right. You're like, my tour guide's insane.
Right. Well, I said, look, you're on your own. If you want to go that route, be my guest. But the rest of us are going the other way. So we rerouted. 3-4 days went by, and there's no sign of them. They should have been there by now, And like, what happened to these guys? This is before the age of cell phones and all that, so we couldn't make any quick calls. Okay. And I suddenly got an email from them saying they'd gone back to the U.S. because they were kidnapped going down the river.
God. Oh my God. Now they're like the number one dream followers. And they obviously escaped from being kidnapped, luckily, unharmed, I assume.
They were handcuffed, blindfolded, everything stolen from them, and sent downriver. And some fishermen rescued them, basically. And they were so, traumatized from the experience, they just left.
I don't blame them. But now I guarantee, I don't know them, but they are probably the most dedicated, dream believers. I feel like after that, I would be like, I would be like, never doubting anyone again.
But the rest of the group was really thankful we didn't go down that river.
I could imagine. Wait. Well, I'm so glad you listened and weren't like, okay, people are going to think I'm crazy, that you went with it. Because that takes a little courage and trust, in yourself.
Yes. Yeah, it does. But I've had so many of these that I know. It's like I said, especially if I wake up trembling, that's that's the clearest sign that I've got to listen to the dream, no matter how crazy the message is.
Did you ever not listen and regret it?
Oh yes, I've had regret dreams, but those are only with respect to the financial dreams, not the other dreams. And also, actually, at one time, also my first marriage, I had dreams saying, "Don't get married," and just didn't listen to those dreams, and that I regret too.
And you married them anyway. Oh no.
Yeah. That's the problem with being in love with someone. It's like it can really dull your other sensibilities.
I think we've all been there. Yeah,
right.
Very true.
Right.
Yeah. So you mentioned the investment dreams. I'd
Yes.
love to get into that. So first of all, tell us about a few times you had success dreaming of investments.
Well, maybe I should start with the failure dream first.
Okay. Let's start with that. Let's get the warning.
That was one of my very first investment dreams. That was my, probably my second investment dream. And in this dream, so basically a little backstory here. One of the things I've done in my life is I decided to walk across the United States. And
wow.
it was a 2-year journey from coast to coast. And right before the journey, I had a dream where I'm on this escalator, and the escalator goes down a mall. It's an escalator in a mall. At the bottom of the escalator is a banyan tree. Okay. And on the other side of the banyan tree is another escalator going up. So I go down the escalator to the banyan tree, and then the other escalator goes up the other side. A very simple dream, right? So I knew this was a financial dream because at the time I was working with a product called Banyan Networks. And I knew the dream was telling me to invest in the company. And I didn't want to because at the time the stock had dwindled down to $2 a share. And I knew it was going to go down to zero because I was working with the product. Mm-hmm. It was a really good product, but Microsoft had come on the scene with NT, and I knew Microsoft was going to blow them away with their marketing. So my rational mind was like, don't be an idiot. Don't put your money in this stock.
Right.
Just go do your walk. Right. But what I didn't know was that Banyan Vines they were secretly making another product that they hadn't released called what was it called? Street Talk. And Street Talk was actually sort of the precursor to Google. Mm-hmm. It was an online directory. It was an online shopping directory, basically. And once Street Talk was released, that stock just went from $2 a share to $32 a share.
Wow!
So it was like a 1,600% increase that I'd missed.
Oh my God! Oh, that annoying feeling. Oh. I've had moments like that too. Yeah.
Right. So the next time I had a dream like that, I just followed it immediately. Mm-hmm. So my next dream along those lines was, I was actually in waking life. I was taking the subway back from San Francisco back to Oakland, where I was living at the time. And behind me, two guys were talking about this company called Galena Pharmaceutical. It was a startup company. Mm-hmm. A startup biopharma company. And I couldn't hear much of the conversation because it's so noisy on those subway trains. I was catching a little glimpse here and there. But that night I had a dream. And in the dream, I was in a theater, an empty theater, and the screen opens. It's one of those old-fashioned theaters that has the curtains and the screen opens, and the the piano comes out and the person's playing the piano. And on the screen it said Galena, and that was it. And then these two Indian guys come and sit a few seats down from me on the same row, and they start squabbling, and they're twins. Okay. So I knew what the dream meant when I woke up. I was like, okay, this stock is going to double. That's why they're twins. So this time I didn't take any chances. The very next day, this is before before the internet era. So you have to go to a physical broker. You go to the bank, take your money out, go to a physical broker, buy the stock, and keep it somewhere, right? And you wouldn't believe it. In a week, that stock doubled.
Oh my
And
God.
it doubled because an Indian company bought a huge stake in Galena. They bought a 30% stake in Galena, and that doubled the price of the stock.
Oh,
So
so
the
the Indian and the twins.
Indian twins, right?
So do you do this for work ever? Do you invest other people's money?
I don't. I do give up people tips. If my friends ask for tips, I'll give them a tip. If I
Mm-hmm.
whatever my most recent dream has been, I'll
Mm-hmm.
give them a tip.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents actually made a bundle that way. That would give them tips, so that's how they made my mom made her fortune that way in a way. She just kept using my tips. I didn't
Using
have much money
oh,
myself at the time, but fortunately she did. So,
nice, nice. So
yeah, very
she's like,
nicely.
okay, she is glad she was supportive of your psychic and dreams as a kid, I'm sure. And so anyone who's telling their kids this stuff is crazy, listen to Bhaskar because that super paid off for her. Not,
She had a
my
very love-hate relationship with dreams.
what?
She had a very love-hate relationship with dreams.
Oh, really? But
Yeah,
she
she actually
encouraged you,
no, she
but
didn't
yeah.
encourage me. She discouraged me.
Oh, well, okay, I take back what I said. Discourage your kids and they'll do it anyway, and it will pay off
We'll
in
do
your
it
older
anyway.
age.
Exactly. Because
Wait,
once I,
what what was her love hate? You were gonna tell me that? Sorry.
well, I mean, I think once again, it's that battle between the rational mind and the intuitive mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the rational mind has its own ideas based on logic, and then the intuitive mind comes and throws a wrench in the plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think her rational mind kept saying, "Oh, you can't listen to this dream stuff. What is this rubbish?"
Mm-hmm.
But she was actually very very intuitive herself. She wasn't as into dreams as I was, but she was very intuitive. So her
Okay.
dreams kept kicking in, despite her reliance on her rationality. They kept intruding, and giving her information. And once in a while, she would just share that with me because she knew I was really into dreams. So she was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna have to this one is so compelling. I've got to share it with him and see what he thinks about it." But surprisingly, she did actually listen to all my investment dream advice. She took all those to heart for some reason, despite her own misgivings, and did very well with that.
Well, that paid off. And
Yeah,
actually, this just you mentioning this makes me just want to back up a little and ask when you
yeah.
first had that dream at 8, and what did your
Yeah.
parents say? Were they just like, "This is crazy," or were they like,
Well, they
"Keep
never knew.
dreaming"?
They
Oh, you
never
didn't
knew.
tell them.
Oh,
Okay,
they
okay.
won't understand.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think mine would have understood either. I think I would have told them and I don't know what they would have said if something like that happened.
Yeah.
Um yeah. You might I have no idea. Um so apparently your father after he
Yes.
passed helped
Yes.
you in some
Right.
dreams. And
Yes.
first of all, I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. It's, I've been there. It's horrible, so um what tell me a little about your communication and help and support from your dad.
Well, my father and I had a very contentious relationship when I was a child. But over time, as I grew into adulthood, we sort of repaired the damage. And by the time he passed away, we had a very loving relationship. We became very close to each other. And I saw him a week before he died, and spent about a week with him right before he died. And so I think he was very protective of me and wanting to, very much interested in my welfare, particularly my financial welfare. He was a guy who was very interested in money matters. So I think this was natural for him to be wishing me well on the financial front. So what happened was after he passed away, almost every month I would have a dream where he would and I would go for like a walk and talk, and he usually would give me some advice. And then one day, I think it was about a year after he passed away, I had a dream where I saw him in a CVS store. I was kind of wandering around lost in a CVS store, and I ran to my dad, and he just looked at me straight in the eye and said, "Invest in AI." And that was the dream. And this was about
Nice.
6 months
Okay.
before OpenAI released ChatGPT. So I had this sort of 6 month window to put some money in some of the AI stocks before they just, flew off the charts. Once ChatGPT came out, they just flew off the charts. So, once again, it was just sort of my father sort of, protecting me and protecting my financial well-being, this time through a dream. But nowadays, he comes to me mostly for
Really?
health issues. If I have a health issue, yeah, he'll come and like whatever the prescription is in that dream, I'll know it's a prescription because my dad's in it. My dad was a doctor, so I'll just know he's coming in that capacity as a dream doctor to give me some health advice. One phenomenon that's very interesting is a lot of women who've had breast cancer have had either a mother or a grandmother appear to them in a dream. Usually, that mother and grandmother has also suffered from breast cancer and maybe even died from it. And so they come to their daughter and granddaughter and warn them of what's about to happen. And then if they follow the prescription, if they go to the doctor and get checked up, they usually find that it's true, and they're able to intervene at an early stage and save themselves, save their lives, basically. There's a whole book on this if you're interested, your reader's interested.
Yeah.
It's called, just look it up quickly, Dreams That Can Save Your Life by Larry Burke and Kathleen O'Sullivan. The entire book is dedicated to dreams of women who survive breast cancer because of dreams.
And now, do these types of dreams, visitations from your dad, predictions, do they feel different than normal dreams? Because I know when I really work hard on remembering my dreams, and my personal tips of that are, I start writing down any tiny bit I remember, and then as I do that, I start remembering more and more and more. But otherwise, I don't. When I'm not really in that practice on almost a daily basis, I don't remember my dreams. However, there are a few dreams, like visitation ones or aspects that came true, that I remember no matter what, and so vivid and so strong. Right. Do these dreams feel different than your other dreams for you? And if so, how?
You just kind of hit the key word there. They're more vivid, right?
Okay.
There's more intensity in the dream, It's kind of subjective, I mean, a lot of times in these dreams, that deceased person isn't just there. They're trying to communicate with you in some way, right? It may not even be verbal, maybe nonverbal, but they're actually trying to connect with you in the dream in some, meaningful way. So you're not just in a dream where you're watching them doing something and running around, but they're actually interacting with you and trying to get some message across to you.
And now, I don't expect you to actually have an answer to this, but a lot of your stories make me wonder, what you predicted future, you were able to alter what would have happened without your dreams, new things that were going to happen. What do you think that says about what time means and future and free will and just the movement of time in general? Easy question, right? Meaning of time. What is that?
The meaning of time. Well, it's just a lot more than clock time. I think that's the foundation to start one's exploration. Our lives are so dictated by the clock, right? And to get out of that mode and to realize that aside from this quantitative measurement of time also has these qualitative dimensions, right? And the more we can pay attention to that, the more I think, our understanding of time will open up, right? So, a phenomenon that most people have noticed is that when we're bored or in pain, it just seems like time just drags, right?
Yes. Yes.
When we're having fun and we're excited, engaged, things tend to move a little quicker, right?
Right. Right.
We kind of dismiss that as, oh, it's just a psychological thing, but that's actually, I think, a dimension of time. That's one of the qualitative aspects of time, and we may kind of foo it, but it's a lot like understanding a piece of, like, knowing a piece of fruit, like, we can both take an apple, and I can spend the next hour measuring that apple, its size and its dimensions, how much liquid it holds, and all that. And you could be eating that apple, right? At the end of the hour, you're going to have a much better appreciation of what that apple is than I will, right? Sometimes you
Right.
just got to bite in, you got to taste, you have to experience, So I think paying attention to our experience of time is really key. And I was kind of fortunate that way because my childhood, I spent a lot of time flying back and forth between India, the UK, and the United States. And I kept moving back and forth. And one of the things that I noticed as a child, it was just so apparent to me, was that the flow of time in each of these countries was really different.
How so? Well, that
Meaning,
I've
like,
heard that.
In the US, time flowed much quicker. An Indian day was really slow. I always thought of the Indian day as equivalent to 3 American days. Time was just
Wow.
so much slower. The days were so much longer, and the UK was in between the two.
And what do you think that is? Do you think it's everyone in the US moves so much faster? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, when I think of like summers as a child, like they
yeah,
felt endless and,
right.
they were only a
There you
couple
go.
months.
Yep,
I mean, school crept on because I hated school so much,
right,
but nevertheless,
right.
I would grow in a summer.
Yeah,
School felt deadening to me, whereas the summer I would grow so much. So it was like
exactly.
a very weird time dilation when I look back on
Exactly.
childhood.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
is that so? It's kind of the way the culture interacts with time. Is that it?
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
busyness, right, that we have. Right. I mean, the U.S. is the land of business, but also the land of busyness, right?
Right. Right. And
And so time
somewhere like
speeds
New
up,
York, yeah.
especially New York, where you are.
Yes,
Right?
yes. And I mean, it's so embedded in me, like, because I spent a few
Yeah,
months of the year in LA, and like,
yeah.
oh my God, I mean, I'm polite and I hold it inside, but I'm like pinching myself to like not be rude because people are so
Mhm.
slow. Like, I
Yeah,
order a coffee and it's like,
yeah,
oh my God, people are like taking forever in front of me. And I obviously am like smiling and like trying to look
yeah,
extra nice to compensate because, you
yeah.
can't be mean to people or people walking slowly in front of me. I'm
Right,
like rage,
right.
and, and I'm a nice person. I tend to not like, I don't fight with, I like people, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's so funny how like time is such a big part
But
of
you're out
who
of
we
your
are.
home base, right? So you feel it, you notice it.
Yeah. 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 And again, like I tend to not be, I mean, I get very angry at things like injustice, but I tend
Mhm.
to not be an angry person. Like things don't bother me, except aside from things that I feel should, like mistreatment of people and
Mhm.
animals and
Yeah.
cruelty. But things like I don't get annoyed by little things except
Mhm.
slowness, So, and I know that's like I don't have a right to like bother someone about it, but so I just deal with it. But it's funny, like the way time is so embedded in like us in so many ways. And and I guess my favorite thing about time
Yeah.
that I think about, absolute favorite thing is the way somehow it ties in with light, like if
Yeah.
there could be some people or other intelligent beings in a
Yeah.
planet a certain distance from us that are looking at Earth right now and they're seeing
Yeah.
dinosaurs. And
Yeah.
that's just I
Right.
think about that 24/7.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I don't even know what to think of that. That's
Right. The
yeah.
bending of time, right?
Ending of time and if and how it ties into light and
Yeah.
speed and it like kind of keeps maybe dimensions of consciousness separate, like
Yeah.
the way we can only travel a certain speed and that ties into time travel and it's so I mean that'd be a podcast in and of itself to even talk about a portion of that but
Yeah, but it's good that you bring it up because, like, like the quantum physics, definitely, portrays a much more, what do I say, a more comprehensive vision of time than our
Mhm.
experience of time of being so linear. So
Right.
I'm happy that at least somewhere in our science, you know, there's a
Mhm.
recognition that there's more to time than what we experience, on a day to day basis. And that
Yeah.
matches my dream experiences. A lot of what I read in the quantum, it matches, experiences I've had in the dream world.
How so? In ways you've already said, because of time, or are there other ways that your dreams have interacted with
In time,
quantum
like, so
physics?
like I remember having a dream where I'm in three places at once. So, in a dream, I might be driving down a road, but it's in three different cities at once, so three different locations at once, in a small town, in a rural area, and in a big city. And it's all just layered on top of each other. So it's like happening all simultaneously. And it's very difficult when you wake up to try to like translate experiences like that because they don't fit a waking reality. But in dream reality, all kinds of weird things can happen. Time could flow backwards in dream reality. Weird things can happen. So it's a great space in which to actually experience the multidimensional nature of time.
And am I right? That's what, not this time in Chicago, but
Yeah,
the prior IONS conference in 2024 in
yeah.
Arizona. Yeah, we're Arizona. Your talk was on that. It was ways dreams parallel near death experiences. Am I right about that?
The big dreams. Some of the common characteristics between big dreams and near death experiences. How they
And
can be
I,
wake up calls. How they can be wake up calls.
yeah, can you give some examples? I mean, I thought of that with the way you were describing being in places at once and the way time moves differently, which, that parallels so much in near death experiences. But were there other, you wake up, like, can you just go a little further? Because it was I thought it was a very
Well,
interesting talk.
I mean, some of the characteristics, like in both near death experiences and big dreams, they're unforgettable experiences, right?
Hmm.
They're very transformative. You can't shake these experiences. It's not like they just fade away and you
Hmm.
forget about them. No, they really leave their imprint on you, right? So that's one way in which they're similar. They also really change the direction of your life. Like, the Dakini dream I had with the tooth problem. You know, because of that dream, I decided to direct my PhD studies into dreams and health, and totally changed the direction of my life. And a lot of people who have near death experiences say that when they meet the God consciousness beings, they give them a message saying, now go back and do this. This is what your life direction is supposed to be. You haven't fulfilled your life purpose yet, right? So there's this directional element in the big dream and the near death experience that are very similar in that way. um, also meeting divine beings. Like, I met the Dakini, that was like a divine being that helped me in my dream. And you've got the source and the God consciousness in the near death experiences. People meet. So those are some of the similarities, I think, between the two. And the reason why I think big dreams are so important is that we don't necessarily have to have a near death experience to have that kind of guidance. We can get it from a big dream. We don't have to have an accident, or um, yeah, have someone shoot us. We
Right.
don't have to get that close, and still can partake of the guidance from the other side through big dreams.
And now, how can we do that? It seems your stories you shared, they just
Yeah,
happened. And, the few visitation dreams I've had, they
yeah,
just happened.
right.
How can people try to make this happen?
So you can accelerate the process through various ways. The
Mhm.
main thing is taking dreams seriously, right? I mean, in ancient
Right.
times, people had a lot of reverence for dreams, right? I think we've kind of lost some of that in our modern culture. We wake up to alarm clocks and just kind of get on with our lives, instead of like slowly waking up, and remembering and cherishing the dream and kind of mulling over it, maybe sharing it with our loved ones. That was a very common practice once again in tribal societies was for people to share their dreams in the morning, with the tribe, because it was for them, it was survival. Dreams weren't just for psychological self-help. Dreams were often contain information that would help the tribe to survive some impending situation that was doom like. So we saw, I think, holding the dreams with reverence is really important. Keeping a dream journal, right? That's one way to let the dream maker know that you're really serious about the information coming from within, right? And that improves recall a lot too. If you don't remember them, then how can you partake of the information, right? It really is just a tap. The more you get into it, the more you turn that tap, the more water flows out, the more the dream guidance comes from the dream maker. That's how I see it. It's true. I think some people, are prodigies, and maybe I had some kind of advantage, coming into the world, but that doesn't mean that, any other people can't develop those skills. It's just a matter of putting intention there. And I've helped a lot of people to develop those skills. Like for example, 5 years ago, my mother had a stroke, and because of that, I now spend half my time in India. And when I'm not there, my cousin takes over for me. And he and I are very close now because of this, interaction. Well, he was never a dreamer before. Now he remembers his dreams, and he's having so many psychic dreams these days. It's amazing. Just from our dream discussion talks, he has completely opened up in a matter of 5 years. I mean, I'm absolutely blown away by the kind of dreams he's having today.
And so you think all of us can have this ability, and it's just anyone can have it?
I think really anyone can have it. It's just like, yes, anything else, like a language. If you want to learn a language, you just got to put effort into it. And dreaming is a language.
Right. And do you think we actually are all having these dreams every night, and most of us don't remember them when we wake up?
I think some people are having them, not remembering them, and other people not having them at all.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. But those people can start having them if, they were to study and try.
Yeah. I mean, there's one school of thought that claims that we're actually always dreaming. And when we wake up, the sensory overload is so great that it kind of overlays the dream thing that's happening underneath it. Right? It distracts us from that dreaming layer, but it's still going on regardless. And you think about it, like it is so hard to stay focused on anything for even a minute.
True.
Thoughts just wander in. The mind just wanders off in one direction or another, right? Images pop up and you start daydreaming about this and that. It doesn't take much at all.
And near-death experiencers actually say it feels like waking up from a dream. It feels so much realer. I mean, I think the majority say that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Is it okay if we take a few minutes to talk about a totally different topic?
Sure.
I think you're going to leave everyone hanging if you don't tell us a little bit about walking across America, the United States, it was just the United States, or was it all of the Americas? Okay.
Just the United States, yes.
And that is so interesting. Did you do east to west, north to south? How did you do it?
Went from Delaware to San Francisco.
And it took 2 years.
2.25 to be precise, but yeah, about 2.25 years.
My God. What inspired that?
So I went to listen to a lecture by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She wrote Death and Dying. She started the hospice movement in the United States. And she's an amazing storyteller and lecturer.
I know a lot of you have heard me talk about the Forever Family Foundation. They were absolutely instrumental in helping my grief and in changing my view of the probability of an afterlife. They use science-based testing to certify psychic mediums, have a scientific advisory board, and they host grief retreats. They will be hosting a special grief retreat this October in California, only for parents who have lost a child. The founders, Fran and Bob Ginsberg, who've become like parents to me, although Fran sadly passed in 2020, started the foundation after the passing of their daughter, Bailey, so helping grieving parents is dear to their hearts. This retreat will have psychic mediums and speakers. While they host many grief retreats during the year, having been through it themselves, they understand the unique type of grief and the safe environment needed for those who have lost a child. For more information and to sign up, go to foreverfamilyfoundation.org. I'll also have the link to this retreat in the show notes.
So I went to listen to a lecture by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She wrote Death and Dying. She started the hospice movement in the United States. And she's an amazing storyteller and lecturer. There's one thing she said that night that struck me like a thunderbolt, And she said that when people are lying on their deathbeds, their biggest source of pain is not the physical pain in their bodies. It's the emotional pain, the psychological pain of looking back on their lives and having regrets about things they didn't do. Right? So I was in a very comfortable place in life at that time, but I felt like I was in the wrong place. It was very comfortable, but the wrong place, not where my heart wanted to be. So I sort of asked myself what I really want to do. I wanted some kind of a grand spiritual adventure. And eventually I came up with that idea of doing a pilgrimage a modern day pilgrimage across the United States to get to know the people. This is my adopted country. So get to know the people of the United States, to get to know myself better, have more time with myself, and to get to know the land. I want to know what the land had to say to me. So that's why I did it.
So did you bring like a backpack? Did you backpack for clothes? And where'd you eat? Did you just go into restaurants, or did you go stay at people's homes?
There were people invited, and there was, I would say us, because most of the time I had other people walking with me for various stretches. Yeah, we got, especially in the eastern half of the country is mostly farm country. So a lot of farmers took us in, I must have stayed with over 150 farmer families in the eastern half of the country. And the western half was more wilderness. Once you get to the Rocky Mountains, from there on to the Pacific Ocean, it's more wilderness, and then it's more camping outside, outdoors. But up to that point, mainly staying with farmers and people in small towns too. Mostly went through rural America. So yeah.
And how did you find them? Was this on social media and people would reach out?
Social media. There was no cell phones.
Oh, so this a while. No cell phones. Ooh. Wow.
No
when did you do that?
Nothing. This is 1993 and 1995, before the internet.
Oh, wow. Okay, this was a long time ago. I don't know. I pictured you doing this like 5-10 years ago. Oh my, wow.
No.
So that sounds like it was both very. I would imagine that being both wonderful and very lonely. I mean, it appeals to me, but
I saw I had people with most of the time.
Yeah, okay, true. Yeah. But how did you find these families without,
You didn't find, they found you. So it was like clockwork. This is one of the magical experiences in this journey was, right. So what happens is you're walking, right? So you're walking in farm country. You're walking slowly. You're only walking like 2 miles, 2.5 miles an hour, right? And the farmers are, they're doing their farming. They're on their tractors and they're watching you all this time, right? So they get really curious. So right around sundown, the white pickup truck pulls up next to you and the farmer rolls down his window and we start playing 20 questions. And then they get really curious about your journey and like, oh, come on over to our house and have dinner and spend the night. And that's what we did. And that just went on night after night after night after night.
Wow. Yeah, I guess I'm so used to like the city world where, I see someone walking along with a backpack. It doesn't even register. They're backpacker, traveling. You just don't even notice it. So
it's such an odd sight to see 1 or 2 or 3 people with bright, shiny backpacks suddenly walking down the road. Real oddities.
Yeah, I guess I could imagine that again. Like, I've in New York and then traveling Europe, there's backpackers. Now that I'm imagining like road tripping on country roads, I can see that. Yeah.
Dirt country roads. And like this, once again, it's that time thing, right? We're moving really slowly So the days start getting really long and a lot just starts to happen. They become very full days, oddly
What
enough.
did you walk every day? Would you spend like a week in a town really
Sometimes,
getting to know the people?
yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, it's just people drag you into their lives, things happen.
Yeah. I
Things just
feel
happen.
I feel that would be the best part, There's probably a lot. What was the best part for you?
The best part maybe for all the amazing synchronicities that happen on that journey. A lot of incredible synchronicities happen on that journey. Mind-boggling, just mind-boggling stuff.
Like what?
So I'll give you a story. I ended up crashing a beatnik conference in Boulder, Colorado. And what happened was I saw this poster for the conference at Naropa University, and it was actually a celebration of let's see, who was it? The famous poet, beatnik poet, Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg's 50th birthday celebration is what it was going to be. I saw the poster. I didn't know who they were. I had no idea who beatniks were, but the poster really got my attention. So I went to Naropa University and said, hey, I'm walking across the country. Can I join the conference? They're like, well, we have a volunteer's office. Why don't you go down there and see what, see if they'll let you work there. So I went there, and the head of the volunteers, he's like, no, we don't need anybody right now. We're already fully staffed. So sorry, buddy, but out you go. And just as I'm stepping out, the phone rings, right? And there's this very irate donor on the other side of the phone line because she wrote them a big fat check, and they lost the check. So
Oh my God.
She was very unhappy with them.
Like a paper check in the mail. So yeah, which they could get and then lose. Okay.
Yeah, no PayPal, Venmo in these days. Everything's by paper check or cash. That's it. So the guy gets off the phone, and I turn around and I accost him and I say, "Look, I can see you're really rattled right now. Why don't you go take a smoke break and let me find that check?" Okay. If I find the check, I'm in. It's like, all right. He goes on his smoke break, comes back, I hand him the check.
Oh my God. Wait, and did you use any weird psychic abilities, or you just looked and you could see it because you weren't invested? Sometimes you lose things when you're anxious.
Giant piles of mail on his desk. I just went right through them and found the check.
Okay, that works. Yeah.
But it was that phone call that happened right at that moment was such a synchronicity, because had I been there, had I walked out like 15 seconds sooner, I would have missed the entire thing.
Wow.
So there are so many things like that. And then I ended up staying there for like 3 weeks and actually helped them with the conference. The conference was in dire straits. And they didn't know that I was a conference director before that. So I was just in the right place at the right time, and
lucky for you and for them. And it sounds like a cool conference. I'm glad you were able.
It was an amazing conference,
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you, I want to do a whole episode on this, which we obviously can't do, and it's not aligned with the podcast. So if it's okay, I'm just going to ask you 2 more questions. I know I'm keeping you over an hour. But
fine, no worries.
Okay. What was the worst part of it? You gave some of the best. What was the worst?
The worst part of it? That is a tough question, because I really think it was a really positive experience overall.
Or the biggest challenge, or in the moment. Obviously, I think there are things that were horrible in the moment. I look back.
The biggest challenge was that I started that journey with my girlfriend at the time. And she walked the first 1,700 miles with me and dropped out in Kansas City. Okay. And that was a very hard, letting go, and I had to decide at that point, do I want to continue or not, and the thought of continuing by myself was really scary. Because in a lot of ways I kind of used her as a shield. I feel I used it as a shield. It's definitely easier traveling with a woman by your side. People react to you very differently than if you're solo.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But oddly enough, I let her go, and I decided to continue on. And the bizarrest thing happened. So 2 days later, I was in Lawrence, Kansas, and I was sitting on the curb of an intersection, and all of a sudden this red Ferrari kept whizzing by like over and over again, you know. And finally it stopped, and these two guys walked up. One of the guys was like, I know you from somewhere. And it turned out he did know me. He was actually a friend of my girlfriend at the time, and they'd gone to art school together. I'd met him once before, almost like 8-9 months ago. And then, I told him what had happened. He was like, where's Britain? And I was like, oh, we just broke up like 2 days ago. And he was like, well, I just broke up with my girlfriend too. And I was like, let's go have breakfast. Then he ended up joining me for the next month. He just quit his job and started walking with me.
So cool.
So I suddenly had another company at company again. Someone who actually knew my ex, which was amazing. Because imagine the therapeutic conversations that he and I had. He had broken up. I had broken up. He knew my ex-girlfriend. It was just bizarre. And he walked across Kansas with me. And we had this amazing time together. So these weird synchronicities just kept things going, and I just had to trust. Like, okay, everything's going to work out. Sometimes bad things will happen. Just keep going, and things will work out just fine.
And I guess my last question about this, there's no way you can do something like that and not profoundly grow or change in some way. How did it change you? What was like your biggest growth or transformation or?
Well, my biggest transformation at the time was it really opened my heart. Okay. Because so many people took me in and were so nice and kind to me. I mean, the kindness of strangers was absolutely phenomenal. It's even when I look back now, how many people who didn't know me at all just took me in, I would ask people often, I said, what trusted you? What made you trust that I wasn't going to do something evil to your family or to you, And, they almost all had the same answer.
What?
They said, our dogs liked you.
Oh, I love that. Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
My dog, he can be very protective of me. And sometimes, he's gotten a lot better because we've done a lot of training. But, he was abused rescue. But there was for example, one roommate of mine who was a total jerk. And my dog, that's the only roommate my dog never ended up loving. And my dog hated this roommate, chased him around, nipped at him. I'm like, yeah. All my dates now, they have to pass the Pickles approval. And my other dog, Peanut, loved everyone. But this whole other story that I'm going viral, she chased and attacked Harvey Weinstein and scared him.
Oh, really?
So, and it's this famous story now, which is hilarious. But, and she literally, Pickles is more protective. My dog, Peanut, melted and loved every person she met except Harvey Weinstein. And now that's famous, we're Pickles, you got to go get Trump. You got to go get Trump. Your turn. That's the evil one. That's your turn to get. So they can
sniff trouble. They can smell it on people, I think,
They can.
Yeah.
Well, it's now been over an hour twice, which I so appreciate. And so before we go, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like me to ask you? Anything you'd like to share? Before I ask you where everyone can find you.
I would just, wherever you are, just start paying more attention to your dreams, setting intentions when you sleep, hey, I'd like to remember my dreams, or I want this kind of a dream. I need some answers on this particular question or issue in my life. That's what the dreams are there for. They're to help us. They're problem solving tools. And it's free. It's we have this nightly advisor, that's willing to give us, information, advice, support, totally free. There's no charge. All we got to do is ask. It's that simple.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, so good advice and great conversation. And lastly, where can everyone find you, follow you, sign up, tell them a little about where they can join conferences, dream conferences?
Well, you can't really find me that easy because I'm kind of a dream character. I'm a little
Oh
elusive.
no.
I mentioned that in the last interview too.
Yeah, yeah.
I do have a website, but I'm kind of revising it right now. So I'm not sure if I want to put that out right now. But what you can do, what I do recommend people do is there is the IASD, the International Association for Study of Dreams. I would recommend going to their website. You'll find links to me there as well. But that is sort of the repository of really active and advanced dreamers. It's sort of a directory and an association of people, of researchers, publishers, writers, in the dream world. And pretty much any question you have, you can have answered, on their website or through members of the IASD.
Great. And you don't have a social media account, or, well, I guess if anyone who wants to connect with you or take one of your workshops or anything, can they email me?
They can always email me, and my email is very simple. It's just my first name, Bhaskar, BHASKAR _ Banerji, last name BANERJI @yahoo.com. I'm happy to send you information or answer any questions that you have.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_ or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?